Hello, hello. What is up, my beautiful peeps? I'm excited about this. I'm kind of nervous talking about this. Talking about, I just wrote the description in the Facebook Live thing. Hit the go live button, and all of a sudden I just started kind of laughing at the fact that I'm actually talking about this stuff. I can't believe that I'm actually talking about this stuff. I was trained as a chiropractor. So what business do I have talking about parenting and shame? Because I'm talking about parenting and shame today, and I want to help demystify this and help awaken you, if you're a parent, to what potentially you could be unknowingly doing to your kid. Because everybody, especially if you're listening to my content, it's because you want to be more conscious in your life. You wouldn't be listening to this if you didn't have a desire to have more conscious awareness in your life. That's why you're here. So if you found yourself in my kind of container, you're in my container right now. If you're in my container, it's because you want to be, you might be single, but you might have kids, you might, but you want to be a more conscious parent. And so when you really get what I'm about to say, hopefully it might trigger you. So I really want you to pay attention to what's happening in your body as you're listening to this conversation. And please do give me the feedback, because I'm very curious. As far as engagement goes, I really prefer a live audience because I can feel you and I can see your, facial expressions. It really gives me a lot of information as to, it's a two-way conversation. So I really want you to engage with me and let me know what comes up in your body as I'm sharing this with you, because I never imagined myself talking about this. I'm a chiropractor, and I discovered that people coming in to see me, I retired this year in my 20th year of practice, because I realized about 10 years ago, everybody coming to see me was coming in for a stress-related problem. And so I started teaching about stress because that was the level that I was at. I was like, oh, chiropractor, neck pain, back pain, general vitality, health and vitality, expansion of energy, people who are generally sick and nervous systems, not really working well. And my job was to get them better. And then I make a discovery. Stress is what brings most people in to visit any doctor or healthcare provider or coach or whatever. And so when I discovered that about stress, I realized that I wanted to actually be the one to help get to the root cause. So I was like, hey, the root cause is stress. But the interesting thing was, the deeper I went in my own healing, I realized that most stresses come from ruptured attachments. All right, ruptured attachments. And so what does that mean? It means, think of the relationships in your life, and when you have a breakdown in them, you experience a stress because the attachment, especially if you're attached to this person and you actually give a shit about this person, when you have a rupture with them, is any argument, any what they call in somatic work, misattunement. If that's happening, you experience a distress reaction. You go to fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. This is all childhood wounding. This is all kind of patterns and cycles since you were a little baby. And so here you are with them now, and they're showing up. And then these ruptured attachments from the relationships that have broken down cause stress, which then lead to illness, problems, general low vitality. Think of anything, chronic problems, digestion, immune, chronic pain. We see all of it, like fibromyalgia, like they're the ones that come in and they realize, wow, I've done everything, but I never went really upstream to these ruptured attachments. When we look at these ruptured attachments, breakup, separation, we have so many people asking questions about, dating and this person that I'm seeing, or my husband, this and that. And so there's usually, what stresses you out is ruptured attachments. And so These ruptured attachments aren't new. They're not new experiences. They are something that you've been carrying in your body since you were a child. So naturally, as I went deeper into my own healing, I had to go further and further upstream, and I realized that I had been totally missing out of my healing because I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. I went through a divorce. I went through one relationship challenge after another, and I was staying on the cognitive level to kind of do my inner work was, cognitive, changing the story around. And then I realized, holy shit, as I kept going upstream, I realized it all comes down to a ruptured attachment within ourselves. Eureka. And I realized, I started listening to patterns. Every single person that DMs me, every single person that's dealing with a challenge, a relationship issue, should I stay or go? They literally are dealing with everything that I was struggling with. And not only am I the president, I'm also a client. So I decided I wanted to teach people how to get to the root cause. And so here I am now having a conversation about shaming and parenting. I never thought I would be talking about that. I turned 46 in a couple weeks, and I have a beautiful son who's almost 14 months old, and I'm learning so much about parenting, and I'm super duper grateful that, even though I'm late and I had a 1-year-old, I'm grateful that this second time around, because I'm divorced, in the second half of my life, I'm starting kind of from scratch. It's kind of like after you go through your midlife experience, whatever that was for you, you have a second chance if you play your cards right, what I've discovered, and learn how to use what you learned from the first half of the journey to your advantage and pick up the skills you never learned in that first half of the journey that kind of caused you to survive. You learned how to survive, but those same survival mechanisms from childhood, they don't work. They don't serve the same purpose in your relationships in the second half of life. And in other words, there's some unlearning that we must do if we want to have a different experience in the second half of life. And so when I looked at that and I looked at myself, I realized, wow, I was the product of intergenerational trauma. And because of those unresolved attachment traumas of how I was born through my childhood and adolescence, and all the experience that I had with oppression, with sexuality, with religion, they shaped who I am. And trauma does not necessarily have to have a capital T trauma. I spoke to somebody today. He was like, I didn't really have a lot of trauma. I had small T trauma, lots of those, and I'm going to explain what that is. But it was just one big T trauma that I think about like every week, and he's dealing with depression and addictions, and his mother has mental illness, and he does comedy now because that's, kind of like Billy Crystal. He loved to make his mom laugh because she had mental illness. And so now he's a comedian. He's going into psychotherapy and learning how to be a therapist. And so he's kind of, it's just an interesting dude that I just met. And so I thought, okay, he said, I have a lot of small T traumas. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a Facebook Live about this because after listening to this, after hearing this, you're going to actually realize that it's actually almost impossible if you were born today, if you were born in the last, 50 years, it's impossible to not have, to be at the effect of some form of trauma. So today I'm going to talk about a little T trauma called shame. Shame, big T trauma, physical violence, it hurts. It hurts for a while. You might have some bruises, sexual stuff, but it's and they leave their mark, right? But you can also experience little T traumas, like little by little on a consistent basis, enough times that it actually results in a shifting of your nervous system state to becoming more kind of like what we call into a fight or a freeze response, right? Shame is the experience of thinking that you're bad, like there's some badness in you, deep down in your core, you have badness to you. And so this comes from parents who really mean well. And so I want you to pay attention to what comes up, what triggers come up for you in this conversation. I'm genuinely curious. I would love to hear it. Just share in the comments. Also share where you're listening from, because I'm curious where our community is. And if you're brand new, hey, welcome. I'm a chiropractor who turned into a interpersonal trauma specialist so that I could figure out why my relationships weren't working. Discovered what it was, went upstream, shifted the story, not just cognitively, but finally, for the first time, I shifted it in my body. And now I've been able to break that cycle of intergenerational trauma and create a secure relationship. That's a really great indicator of how well our trauma healing work is that we feel safer in relationships. Before this work, my relationships were pretty transactional. My relationships with men were not great. My relationships with my parents, it was based on, hiding because of shame. And for a good reason, I'm going to explain to you the 5 unconscious shaming tactics that parents use unconsciously with all the right intentions, which is to have you behave and be good. So that, so that they don't have to, because they were raised in a world that belonging and having, because we're hardwired for social engagement and social interaction. So if we suffer, there is a great deal of suffering in your biology to suffer the detachment from the detachment from belonging, from the collective, right? So the social norms, right? So especially if you're Indian, if you're, East Indian, if you're Persian, if you're Asian, Greek, Italian, I usually use cultures where society and family dynamics, Arab, like where family enmeshment is big, where, it's all about, fitting in and belonging and having everyone's approval, because not having it meant, withdrawing of love and not belonging. So it's a threat to our nervous system to not belong. And so unconsciously, because we know this and we were raised this way, if we don't get this right, we will unconsciously use these strategies to raise our children. And I'm committed that my 1-year-old does not have the experience of being shamed with one of these 5 common shaming tactics. So I'm going to write them down, and I want you to tell me if you resonate with any of them, which one of these relate to you the most. I want to know which one of these shaming strategies or whatever, which one resonates the most, and I'm going to write them down. Those of you who are on, I'm not sure if you can hear me properly over there on Clubhouse. I have a Clubhouse chat going on, so I'm just trying it on simultaneously, a Facebook Live. JJ, I see that you're there. If you want to jump on Facebook Live and watch, let me know if you can hear it. I'm just trying it on. So this is just a test for Clubhouse, but I want to go over these 5 shaming, parenting with shame. So the real reason why these shaming strategies happen is, let me see, there it is. The real reason is obedience. Why do parents raise with shame? It's because of obedience, because we can get, especially if they were parented that way. They were parented with shaming, and I'm going to give the 5 in a moment. But tell me which one predominates for you. So the shaming strategy number 1. My name is Dr. Nima Rahmany, and you've been listening to the Trigger Proof, designed to teach you the most important skill necessary for a dramatically changing world, which is nervous system regulation. And becoming trigger proof doesn't mean trigger less. It means learning how to regulate ourselves to bring us back to center so that we can then be governed by our purpose rather than from our wounds. Anytime there's reactivity, there's a wound. And if you're curious and inspired to learn more, join us at Breathwork and Badassery or the overview experience. There's a difference between listening to a podcast and actually showing up live and doing the work with a badass community who's all about breaking cycles of intergenerational trauma. It didn't start with you, but it can end with you if you're willing to do the work. See you at the next perfect time. I'm just gonna Number one is is called know better shame. Know better. Know better. So in other words, you should know better. If you have this belief and you kind of have this in your body and you see your child, they react to you or you experience, you should know better. You should know better. In other words, what'll happen is the kid then doesn't realize that, they're not allowed to make mistakes. So then what happens is if you were raised with the belief, the core belief that a parent had was you should know better, what'll happen is you will then interpret that mistakes mean that I'm bad. So I can't make mistakes, right? And so what happens is you will then start to find perfectionistic strategies. And like, for example, working with somebody who has this kind of small t shame, and maybe it was, you should know better, and I'm going to start pounding on you. If you had the small t trauma, you should know better, shaming, and then violence added onto that now, which is what this one person did. She used to work for me. When she would make a mistake and I would tell her, I'd say, hey, there was a huge reaction. She would just get triggered and she would just burst into tears. And if you've ever had that experience where, at the workplace, becomes very disruptive to your work environment because we all make mistakes. I mean, making mistakes is part of the game. Right? And so making mistakes when I'm doing a Facebook Live, making mistakes when I'm in a relationship, making mistakes as a parent, if I don't allow myself to make these mistakes because of this unresolved shame that's deep in my body, because I was shamed, then when I'm a parent, I see my kid, I'll say, you should know better. And the truth is that I'm now reflecting to my kid, my son, Dominic. Let's say I turn to him and go, Dominic, you should know better. What I'm doing is I'm downloading my intergenerational, perfectionistic, self-abandoning trauma that came from being shamed from a parent who himself was at the effect of the exact same thing. Know better is, the internal voice that I should know better, I'm not allowed to make mistakes, becomes really painful. We become perfectionists and it creates anxiety, and that's a small t trauma, right? So I want you to pay attention to your use of language. And this is the only thing is you could say this to your kid, or you could, this is not so much saying the words, you should know better. You know what I'm talking about. When you get a look from a parent that looks at you like you should know better, if I'm believing that about my son, he's going to feel it. It's very nuanced here. We're talking about the nervous system. Our nervous systems are very contagious. If I have that you should know better trauma in my body and I haven't done my trauma work, I'm going to download it onto Dominic. So my work is to be very mindful of that number two, but number one is to actually deal with the internal shame that I was raised in and heal those attachment traumas. That's my inner work to do. You know, in an ideal world, everyone does their trauma work before they get married and have kids, but it just didn't work out that way for many of us, right? I'm lucky that happened for me, my second marriage. First marriage, of course, I didn't do my trauma work, hence the divorce, right? Now I have the skills and the awareness. That's why, you know, I really want to help you break that cycle too. So that's why this conversation is so important. So the number two is comparative shame. Comparative shame. So this is when, you know, you should do better. You know, why couldn't you do this all of my cousins are medical doctors, specialists, you know? And so when I became a chiropractor, it was like, oh, look at all of your cousins. Look at all of your cousins. I don't see any of your cousins doing what you're doing, leaving your work to go and become like phony Tony Robbins. Like, Dad, I'm not trying to be Tony Robbins. I want to teach people how to resolve the shit that was downloaded onto me from you. The comparative shame is real, right? So I want you to really, parents, be really mindful of this, right? Now, you can be mindful, but if you've been downloaded comparative shame in your body, by the way, I'm a twin. Doesn't get more comparative than that. If you find yourself that kind of person, you're Persian, you definitely have that. If you're fucking Persian, you have it, my Persian friend. Hello, salam, hal shama. You are holding on to comparative shame and you will have it. And then you'll see other kids and you'll be like, I got to do that for my kid. Oh, they have a Fendi handbag. My 4-year-old daughter, Persians would say, my 4-year-old daughter, that 4-year-old has a Fendi handbag. Well, I got to get one for my daughter. You know, that you're downloading this unconsciously. You don't even know it. You know, it's like I've been to households, you know, where, it was one of my cousins. I went to his house and my cousin's kid looks at my ring and goes, oh, you have diamonds. Yours is better than my dad's. And I'm like, oh my God, comparative shame is real, yo. So number two, let me know if that resonates at all with you. The third one is a desire shame. Desire shaming. This is where you have the, good girls. Sorry, this is when you say, oh, you shouldn't be bad. You know, you shouldn't be so selfish. You know, when you see a child and they want this and they want that, and then you kind of like have the desires within you like smacked away. You shouldn't want that. You should be grateful for what you have. What happens is, deep down inside, there's a child within all of us that has desires. But then you get the messaging through body language, through a withdrawal, through a kind of a dissociation and a shutting down of connection. And the child all of a sudden feels it inside. The child feels it and the child says, okay, well, I shouldn't be so selfish. I shouldn't have desires. It's not right for me to have desires. So how many of our students, when we're working on, helping them, expand in what they want in their lives, they're like, oh, I can't do that. And it's deep in the body. It's in your body. If you've ever experienced feeling guilt for asking for what you want, then you likely are holding on to desire shame within your body. And if you don't actually address that at its root, you'll constantly be feeling unfulfilled because you're going to blame the outside world for not fulfilling you, but there's a part of you that doesn't believe that your desires are worthy. So if you even somebody offered those desires to you, you'd push it away because you're not worthy, because of the desire shame that you've experienced. And guess what's going to happen if you don't resolve that? And then you see your child starting to want something, starting to have desires. When you see your child reaching for the stars, then you'll be the one that tells them, you should be very happy with very little. don't dream. You're just dreaming. I remember telling my mom what I wanted to do. Choking on my water there. And she's like, you're just dreaming. You're dreaming. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I am. And so before that used to piss me off. Now I realize she was only desire shaming me because that was her experience. This is how small t trauma gets passed down. Does this resonate at all with you? Right? So number 4 is moral shame. Let me know if you've experienced that. Moral shame. God damn, my cough. There we go. I don't have COVID. It's okay. Moral shame. Good girls don't do that. Oh, bad, good boys don't do that. Good girls don't touch themselves like that. Ooh, talk about moral shame and sexuality. Pretty much most people that I know, or women that I had dated in the past, have some sort of a story of morality regarding their sexuality. I certainly did. I had to have chastity before marriage, right? So when I had my horny teenager, whatever going on, and it wasn't, I had to sneak around because it wasn't good. I wasn't being good. So lo and behold, moral shame, it runs in the body. Now I see the value of it. It's like some of you, with your religious fundamental beliefs or religious beliefs, it's kind of like a little boundary, just to kind of as a guideline, because humanity and our animal nature can get pretty buck wild, right? We can get worse than animals in our behavior. So I see the value of religious doctrine and guidance and everything like that. I 100% see it, and I'm not questioning that. I was raised in it. There is a fine line, however, between that and then the experience, giving children the experience of shaming for their own natural impulses, right? And so that unconsciously gets downloaded onto the kids. It's important for me to let you know because, I run programs that focus helping people who are dealing with relationship dynamics, who are dealing with sexual dynamics, of intimacy issues in their marriages and all that stuff. And they've gone to counseling and all of this stuff and tried talking through it. But what they don't realize is, all the talking doesn't address this unconscious shame that we're all holding on to in our own unique way that's been left unaddressed through these unresolved attachment traumas, which have us detaching from ourselves. So if you want to do couples counseling, that's fine. Have at it, but deal with your fucking, trauma work that's in your body. You can't talk your way out of that. There's that involves a different skill, and no one can do that for you. A therapist can't do that for you. And here's the other conundrum of it within our nervous system. We need one another. I can't do it alone. Even though I teach this stuff, I certainly can't do it alone. We can't do it alone, and no one can do it for us. There's the conundrum, isn't it? So moral shame. That's a biggie. Ouch. What has been the impact of moral shame on your life? And we have desire shame. And the 5th one I wanted to mention is called what I call reflective shame. It's when, so we have know better shame, we have comparative shame, we have desire shame, we have moral shame, and the 5th one is called what I call reflective shame. And reflective shame is when, let's say I have Dominic, he's my son, and I believe, which I can't help but believe because that's in me, that he's a reflection of me, right? Well, first of all, he is a reflection of me. The little fucker looks exactly like me. And somebody messaged me earlier and said, don't use that term little fucker when you're talking about him. And my wife and I kind of jokingly, it's a playful thing. So I understand if that term especially if you've been sworn at as a parent and stuff. I do believe that our nervous system state plays a big part. So when I say it, I don't say it in any way other than in a heart open safety, and it's received I can feel that he's receiving it really well. And so I do appreciate the parenting advice that I get when I hear that stuff. I really thank you. I appreciate it. And it pisses me off. So reflective shame is when I think that he's a reflection of me and he's an extension of my ego. So when I believe that his behavior is a reflection of me, then I start to police him and monitor him, and start using shaming unconsciously because because I have shame within myself as a parent. So the antidote to this is to really really deal with my own internal shame of how badly I need for everybody to validate me through my son. And that comes from my childhood. That's my trauma work. If I don't do that, then my son becomes an extension of my ego. And I'm not impartial and, what's the word I'm looking for? Unbiased when I'm parenting him. I am trying to groom him to make me look good. So I use my son as a tool to kind of reflect my own ego. Have you ever experienced that from a parent? Have you ever had the experience where you were kind of pushed into something that looked good so that you could be bragged about, right? It's not a terrible thing, and the intention isn't bad. It comes from parents that are not okay with their shadows. That's it. It's a parent that hasn't really dealt with and integrated and felt and faced and owned their own shame. And so we then download it onto our kids. This is the insidious nature of intergenerational trauma. These 5 kind of shaming beliefs. We have the moral, what do we have here? We had no better shame. We have comparative shame. We have desire shaming. Know better, you should know better. Comparative, oh, look at so-and-so, you're too old for that. Desire shaming, or don't be so selfish. Moral shaming is good girls, good boys don't do that. You should do better, and then there's reflective shame, where you're judging them based on where you're being judged, where you are seen as a embarrassment to them. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I remember one time this is a very, very distinct memory for me. I was with a friend, and we went, and he's a rapper. And this is when I was kind of putting some rap songs together. And I went on the street with him with his little microphone and beatbox, and I just started freestyling. And then people came and put money into his little kitty thing, whatever, into his little hat. And I went and told my dad about that. And he goes, What? You're begging on the street? What would my sisters think if they saw you? Right? Boom. That's reflective shaming, right? Now, that made me feel like absolute shit, because the impact on the child is I'm bad. I'm a bad person. I'm unworthy of love, and so it causes us to, in order to belong, we have to fragment and separate from ourselves. And so this begins the coping strategy to belong that begins in childhood, that leads you into a life of living separate from your truth. And this is where anxiety begins. Anxiety is the fracture from the self. It's a soul condition that causes an alarm in the body because of trauma. And I'm talking little t trauma like shaming over and over and over again. It doesn't necessarily mean physical violence. If you've been compared if you have a parent who has this comparative shaming trauma within himself and his family members, well, then he's going to download it onto you and says, oh, your cousins are doing this. You should be doing that too, right? And so deep down, there's this deep inherent abandonment and judgment and blaming and shaming of ourselves, because we then start to parent ourselves the way that we were parented. It's very painful when you first realize this, because this is normalized to you. You don't know that this is an insult, an assault to your nervous system, but it very much is. And that's my son, and he's fully self-expressing right now in the midst of my little. So he's really cute. So what do you do? What do you do about it? That's really the next question. And what you do about it is a dedicated practice. It's not going to happen by talking about it. Listening to this video, I'm sure, will give you insights. Let me know if there's been any insights that are relevant for you. I'd love to hear your feedback. And definitely invite people into the community. Just invite several people that you know that need to hear this, because I want to help. I'm here to help break family cycles. And most places we go are trying to hash it out at the story-based level. He said this, she said that, mom this, that. And what if nobody was to blame? What if we took the word fault and blame out of it and acknowledged that there was a lot of harm and a lot of pain, and acknowledged how bad that sucked, and that, no, it wasn't fair. And I 100% agree with you. Let's acknowledge that, step one, and then go, okay, now what can we do that's going to be productive, that helps guide me from this feeling of victimhood that I've been carrying all my life, that's causing me anxiety, that I'm repeating again and again and again in these cycles in relationships, because I'm shaming myself. I can't get away. It's impacting all of my relationships. It's definitely impacting my parenting. And, you're in a position, maybe you're single and you want to heal, and then you want to have a secure relationship. Great. Now is the time to do our trauma healing work, so that you can now have a secure container for a secure relationship to thrive. And then maybe have kids and not pass those shaming tactics down, because I can tell you this, but these shamings, these unresolved shamings are still in our body. So without tools of consistently being able to regulate ourselves through them, to integrate them on an ongoing basis, it's a skill. We can take these ruptures. If we do that, we can take these ruptures that will happen in our parenting. I'm going to have ruptures and misattunements and arguments and challenges with my son. I guarantee it. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, but I'm committed to repairing. That's the key. Because every one of us likely have had these shaming strategies growing up, but how many of us actually had the experience of having those ruptures repaired? That's where the magic happens. That's where relationships become stronger over time, and growth happens if you're committed to the practice. So the practice is, if you're doing counseling and therapy, you're at an advantage, because you're in the conversation and you've probably heard it. It's just a skill you haven't yet mastered. So if this is relevant for you, and this is something you actually see and notice, I'm curious, write in the chat box here, those of you who are on Facebook Live right now, or if anyone had a question, I'm going to invite the peeps that are in just the room that I just started spontaneously. I didn't think anybody would come, but we have a few people. Anybody has a question, you just put up your hand, and hopefully my peeps in Facebook Live can hear. If you want to jump on and ask a question and receive some guidance on it, I'd love to help. Let me know. Just put your hand up, and I'd love to hear. But are there any questions? Let me know. My mission is to help teach this community how to kind of break free from these enmeshment dynamics, these enmeshment where we kind of merge with other people's emotions, and there's no real boundaries between the definition of who we are and and our family members, our friends. We don't really know who we are. The big battle cry of enmeshment trauma is, I just don't know who I am anymore. I've been pleasing all my life. I just don't know who I am. I keep getting into the same patterns in relationships. Should I stay or should I go? I'm tired of feeling anxious all the time. I just want to have some freedom. I don't know what my purpose is. Why do my partner and I keep getting into the same arguments again and again and again? Why is it that I can't get over my ex? Why is it that I take things so personally and I can't get over the opinions of others? All of these, I discovered, Eureka, has the same source, these unresolved ruptures. And so I created a modality that is both cognitive and body-based, so that we can, change the narrative. Like right now, this is the cognitive stuff. We're talking about it. It's, you're digesting it in your brain. You're probably getting triggered quite a bit. And maybe you want to run away from this conversation and this is uncomfortable for you. Well, I'm going to encourage you and invite you to lean into that, because whatever has been activated in this conversation is a part of you that's calling for some reunion, saying, hey, finally, I feel validated right now. Please help me. And so it's not wrong to ask for help. It's one of the trauma responses is, hiding and hiding and running. So many of you that I've kind of encountered reach out to me and ask for help, and then say, give me your backstory. And then I say, okay, here you go. Click on this and let's go ahead. And all of a sudden you're like, I can't do this anymore. I got to do something. And then I'm like, sure, here, click on that, apply there. You got to be, have some sort of evidence that you're wanting to invest in a solution, that you have had some sort of, this is one of my stipulations now, you have had to have done some personal development. We used to open these applications up for everybody, and it turns out people, just really haven't invested in their mental health, their emotional well-being yet. We prefer then the people who've gotten those results are the ones who've actually done personal development, have leaned into facing their shadows a little bit. They know that it's going to be scary. They know that it doesn't, they know that it's their responsibility. They're willing to invest in it. And so that's how you know that a person is serious. So if you've done therapy, or you've done years of therapy, years of personal development, Landmark, DeMartini, all of the good stuff, then you're prime ready to go deeper, because this is a little bit, it's more advanced stuff. We used to open it up to the public, and then I realized, wow, not everybody's ready, because I just, I want to be that rescuer for everyone. And then my part of my trauma work is being able to set boundaries and say, no, that we're not a fit. I used to bend and cave and become whatever to accommodate. And that was part of my own kind of fawning response. And the more defined I get with my work and break these cycles that didn't start with me, I'm able to go, no, we're not the right fit. You gotta be coachable. You gotta be willing to get uncomfortable. You gotta be willing to receive feedback. And you gotta be willing to just, own your shit. Not to take the blame, but to understand you've been harmed, you've been hurt, it's unfair, and the story is now overtaken your life, and you're ready to kind of change that story. You're ready to take that identity that you've had as a survivor of something horrible that you're carrying with you for the rest of your life. You got to be willing to let go of that old identity, and that's scary, because the scariest thing is, because if you've been identified as a specific victim of something and you've been labeling yourself as a survivor of that thing, way to go. It sucks that you went through that. I'm so happy that you've gone through, but a lot of times people in that situation, when faced with the opportunity to let go of that identity, freak the fuck out. Their ego defenses go up, and they're like, no, who would I be without this entanglement with that trauma? Who would I be? It's a trauma bond. You kind of get bonded. It's called a trauma bond. You kind of get bonded to that trauma. And what happens is every relationship you go through, it kind of like, because you're still bonded to that trauma, you're going to keep finding it another thing, another trauma bond, the same thing so until the person, we can tell on the application, they say, enough, I'm done. Like there's a knowing that comes in their language, right? It's like, look, I'm going to spare you the story. There's two types of people. One, story. Do you have any advice? In which case I'm like, they're not likely ready, because sometimes we become very addicted to the story. Then there's type 2, which is, I've watched your content. You trigger the shit out of me. You piss me off. I want to turn it off. All these horrible things. And it's exactly what I need, because I'm ready to fucking get over this story. I've been going to therapy for 10 years. I've done all the things, and I'm tired of constantly being in that state. And I'm looking to, I know that it's in my body now. It's not my fault. I don't want to blame anybody. I'm not even blaming myself, but I'm really shaming myself a lot. And what you're saying is making sense. And I don't want to look, I want to look in the mirror and actually love what I see, the end. Except, like, regardless of anybody else out there, I'm like, boom, that person is ready. Let's do this. So I hope I gave you some food for thought. Thoughts are great. Action is better. So if you're actually ready to learn how to create that secure relationship by healing the ruptures that happen to us, because when we're children, we're shamed in these very insidious ways with small t trauma, plus add on the big T trauma. And now we feel stuck in our lives, not able to move forward, being run by resistance and procrastination, and disconnected from our purpose, and feeling unfulfilled in our relationships, and the lack of ability to be present. Health and vitality going, rrr. Anxiety going, rrr. You're not alone. You're supposed to feel this way with unresolved attachment wounds. But the good news is you don't have to. If you're willing to just get a little uncomfortable, lean in, find a guide and a community to help you. You know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. That's fine. There's great guides out there that merge with community and one-to-one type of work. So there's a huge benefit from leaning in and knowing that you're not alone. So the cycle breakers are the people that I like to hang out with. And I'm training a new group to learn how to break cycles in their communities. So I'm now kind of training trainers now. And so we need people to step up, and let me know if you're ready, and send me a DM, and I'll put a link down there. Also putting a link for the upcoming breath work. So if you want to know where to begin, breathwork and badassery. Everyone's like, okay, what do I do? Well, if you're really ready, I'll put a link for a application. But if you're kind of like still petrified of me, and you don't trust and all that stuff, breathwork and badassery is a great event where you can kind of practice being led. Because at some point, when you go through trauma and the shame, we stop trusting. So we don't trust what we see on the internet and stuff. Is this real? Is this guy, just out to get my money? Or is this a scam? All of those resistances are normal. They're supposed to come up. And that's going to be the excuse we use not to trust. But the truth of the matter is, I can't heal from my traumas until I take the risk and trust. We have to. Because we can't do it alone. I certainly didn't. So sending a little link, those links down there. Let me know if you have any other questions, and I'll see you at the next perfect time. Big love.